Hey. It's the phenomenal STEMist. It's the phenomenal STEMist here. Come on and join me. I'm in the process of setting myself up. Hope you guys can join me. Remember, you gotta, you basically have to, sign on to my page in order for you to see this video right away. But we're talking about sedatives. Hey, it's the phenomenal STEMist. Looking for more people to join me. Talking about this is your brain on drugs. It's the topic for this month. This is your brain on drugs. Let's see if I'm online. So we're going to be talking about, first thing we'll talk about is basically what are sedatives and hypnotics. Sedatives and hypnotics. I'm trying to get to my homepage. I don't know how to get there. Via my phone. And I can't see anybody talking to. Oh, somebody's watching me. Can you let me know if you hear me, please? Do you hear me? For some reason, I'm just getting used to my phone. I don't know if I'm online yet, but I am. I am online. All right. Thumbs up. Good. We're talking about sleep. Do you know the process of sleep? Just to let you know, the process of sleep entails your brain. It entails your brain. And but before I get to talking about that, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Maya Byfield. I am also known as the phenomenal STEMist. I am a graduate of Oakwood College, now University, where I got a degree in biology. I went on to Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where I received my PhD, master's and PhD in molecular pharmacology. And I have a postdoctoral fellowship, or I did a postdoctoral fellowship in neuroscience. So that's my background. And I'm taking this month to really talk about drugs. This is your brain on drugs. This week in the news, it's been, crazy. A drug was mentioned. Roseanne Barr said she was on a certain type of drug that caused her to create a racial description of one of President Obama's advisors. And so I was like, that would be a good topic of discussion. Do drugs do that? Let's discuss that. For some reason, I can't see your comment. There is a comment, but I can't see it for some reason. Oh, there you are. Hey, Leon. Hey, Nisa. Thanks for joining. I finally see everybody's comments, or whether you're joining or not. So here's the process of sleep. We sleep because our brain is inactivated. All right. So our brain is made up of a whole bunch of neurons. You see that? See, that's a neuron right there, and that's a neuron. Those are cells that talk to one another, right? I'm sure you heard about axons and dendrites. Well, this is an axon, and basically this neuron right here is talking to this neuron. That's how our brain works. Our brain's filled with neurons, and they're communicating. Our whole body filled with neurons. So the reason why we touch is because there are some neurons that move up our hand and send a message up our spinal cord all the way to our brain to say, hey, I feel something. Do you know you don't feel with your fingers? You feel with the top of your brain, or you don't hear with your ears. Sensory messages get through your ears via neurons and then send a message to the side of your brain, and you hear with your brain. And so the reason why we can stay alert is because all the messages, if you see this eye right here, you see that eye, that's a nerve with a bunch of neurons sending messages to the brain, all over the brain. That's why you see these purple arrows. But imagine if everything you saw, everything you touched, everything you tasted, everything the fact that you're sitting down and you constantly felt something, that would be too much sensory overload. So there's a place in the brain that manages all the sensory information. And before you can see something, touch something, feel something, you have to stop off in that area. And then that area will say, yes, it's worth noticing. And then that area will have neurons in it that sends a message. So it's like it's many neurons stopping off. Oh, I forgot to put myself on Periscope. Hey guys, I'm talking about This Is Your Brain on Drugs. Thanks for joining me on Periscope. So yeah, you have these neurons communicating with your brain, but they must stop off at an area of your brain. Well, there's a special area in your brain that shuts that thing down so that it doesn't send messages to your brain. And if you can't touch anything, you can't smell anything, you can't feel anything, your brain goes to sleep. That's what sleep is. Sleep is the ability to not hear, smell, touch, taste anything, so that your brain will relax and gather its memories that day and so the body can be refreshed to start the process all over again. Sleep is very important, and it involves important neurons that remember, stop off at an area first and then get message there. That's how you're alert. Sleep will shut that area down using neurons. So sleep. Let's talk about sleep. Before we can talk about drugs that attack sleep, that's what we're talking about. Drugs that attack sleep. Before we can talk about drugs that attack sleep, we got to understand sleep. So my degree is in molecular pharmacology, meaning I'm not a pharmacist. I'm a pharmacologist, or I'm a scientist that studies how drugs work. So the first thing I did really was study how the cells of our body work and how they can be attacked or activated by drugs, right? So sleep is a process in the human body. Just to let you know, imagine somebody sleeping. There are different stages of sleep. There's stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you look, it's kind of far away, but you see that there's like lots of waves. That says your brain is really active. So when your brain is really active, you are awake. Why? Because all kinds of neurons are firing and you are awake. But when the brain waves slow down, so if you look at stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, you see how the brain waves go up, down, sharp up and down now? That means the brain waves aren't as active. Why? Because you are in deep sleep. So stage 1, it's very active. And stage 5, it's very active. We call this REM sleep, rapid eye movement. It's very active in stage 1 and stage 5. But when you get to stage 2, 3, and 4, so your brain basically slows down and then gets right activated again. Your brain waves are active, and then slowly but surely they slow down and then get active again. And if you look at our stages of sleep, we go through every stage. REM is stage 5. So we're awake. Our brain is very active, and then it's very active, and then it slows down to the point where our brain cannot hear, smell anything. Why? Like I said before, there's a part of the brain that gets shut down. It actually gets shut down so that you cannot sense anything. And when your brain is shut down, that means your subconscious has taken over. So that's when you have like deep dreams. So like at the deepest right here, stage 4, your deepest sleep, you're getting really deep dreams, to the point where sometimes you can have night terrors, or I don't know if you ever experienced feeling like somebody's sleeping on top of you, try to push, because you're so down deep in sleep, right? Your brain is somehow in deep sleep, in the process of waking up, but you can't wake up. You understand? Very, very deep sleep. But notice, it's important that you get that deep sleep. In the first 20 minutes, I love these, we call them power naps. So the first hour, you ever had a power nap, you slept for like 30 minutes and you're like, you felt really revived? Why? Because you went through every stage of sleep into even deep sleep, and then you woke up. And so that's what happens. You go like this process all through the night. But slowly but surely, you don't get that deep sleep anymore. So after like hour 4, like 5, 6, 7, you never get that deep sleep. That's why you should at least get 3 hours of sleep, because you get that nice deep sleep, stage 4 sleep, like where your brain is totally inactive. All right? Because after a while, you'll be in stage 3 and 2 from that on, like stage 2 and 1 from that point on. You never, in the late hours of sleep, right before you wake up, your brain is starting to activate. Basically, your neurons are starting to let go and let your brain receive sensory information. I hope I'm being clear. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in. And so by the time you wake up, see that stage 5 is really REM sleep. You're right there, right about this. Just to let you know, this time frame, this timeline here is like from time 0 all the way to time, 8 hours of sleep. So have you ever had a dream? Your brain was so active when you're dreaming, not when you're having like night terrors, when you're deep sleep, can't wake up. But when you have a really active dream, it's because your brain is really active. Hey, have you ever had a dream where you woke up, you're like, oh my God, I was just about to do something? The reason why is because your brain is very active in stage 5 sleep. We call it the REM sleep, right before you wake up. I want you to get to the point. I hope you get the understanding that your brain activity is what leads you to be alert, and the slowing of your brain activity makes you go to sleep. And it all has to do with neurons that will activate your brain, or when it's time to sleep, neurons that will inhibit your brain to slow down so that you won't sleep anymore. All right. Okay. So now we know about that. So let's talk about what drugs are and how the neurons work to keep your brain active. Okay. The way neurons talk to one another. Remember, I had a picture where there was one neuron and had an axon, and then it talked to another neuron. How do neurons talk to each other? They do them via neurotransmitters. You see? So I'm going to show you that picture again. You see this neuron right here? It goes and talks to this neuron and tells it to tell the brain to be active. How does it do that? It does it by releasing these little purple balls in here. They're called neurotransmitters. So this neurotransmitter will leave this neuron, come and activate this neurotransmitter or inhibit. Okay, so how do drugs work? Drugs will either stop the neurotransmitter from being made. Some drugs do that. Some drugs make more of the neurotransmitter, right? So if you stop the neurotransmitter from being made, whatever that neurotransmitter was trying to tell the neuron to do, that won't happen. If you make too much of the neurotransmitter, whatever that neurotransmitter is supposed to tell the brain what to do will happen too much, right? Or if some of them get taken up and destroyed, and if they get taken up, that's a way of stopping the neurotransmitter from doing what it's supposed to do. So ultimately, chemical balance is when neurons are firing. When I say firing, they are releasing their neurotransmitters and talking to other neurons telling those neurons what to do. So in the context of sleep, one neuron will tell another neuron to keep the brain alert. In the context of that's alertness. So in order to stop sleep, there's a neurotransmitter involved in there as well, but it's actually doing the opposite. It's basically shutting down a neuron. So some neurons release neurotransmitters to cause this neuron to be very active. So I'll go back to that original picture. This neuron will talk to this neuron and say, hey, I want you to tell the brain to be alert. Or some neurons release neurotransmitters to shut down this neuron, to stop the brain from being alert. And so this is what happens in sleep. We're going to focus on this receptor right here, GABA. GABA. You see these receptors here binding to the GABA neurotransmitter? When GABA binds to something, that neuron that released it is actually saying, I need you to shut down. So sometimes neurons will tell other neurons, stop working. And in the case of GABA, that's what happens. It causes calming. So if all my brain cells are firing, I'm going to be alert. But if I have a special neurotransmitter called GABA, and it binds to another neuron via its receptor, it'll say, stop firing. So the brain will stop firing, and I will go to sleep. So sleep requires this type of action. What drugs do, remember I told you there are different things that drugs can do. Drugs can stimulate more of this, stop it, etc. What drugs do is bind to the GABA receptor and act like GABA. So GABA is trying to calm you down. A drug will behave like GABA and calm you down. You see that? Is that resonating with you guys? Is it making any sense? Let me know. So this normal neurotransmitters in your brain make you calm. And if I give you a drug now that will behave just like that neurotransmitter to make you calm. All right. So let's talk about drugs. This is your brain on drugs. I have to first talk about how things work before I talk about the drugs that affect it. And so sedatives and hypnotics are drugs that treat anxiety. People who cannot sleep have their brain active when they should be calm, right? People who have insomnia, people who have panic disorders and social anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. What's wrong with them? Their brain is active. Even when it's time to go to sleep. When you go to sleep, when the sun goes down, naturally, their neurons, remember I showed you that picture? Neurons that go to a special area and that tell that area to be activated to shut the brain down, to say, hey, brain, stop accepting sensory information, go to sleep. But somehow, because of an issue of anxiety, the brain doesn't listen. So what do people do? They take this type of drug. I forgot to actually go and find out the pronunciation. That is non-scientific of me. I'm ashamed. Yeah, don't worry about it though. Benzodiazepines. Let's say that's that. Let's say that's what it is. See, I'm a scientist and I can't pronounce every word. It's a new drug I've never heard of before. Benzodiazepines. Let's see. Yeah. Look it up. Basically, this type of drug treats anxiety, panic disorders, PTSD. It's a powerful drug. It binds to the GABA receptor. Remember what I said about the GABA receptor? GABA is a calming drug. What does it do? It binds to binds to when it gets released by one neuron to another to slow down the brain. Well, if I take a drug and act like the purple thing in there and bind there, it's going to make it behave the same way. Okay. Well, what happens? You go to sleep when you take that drug. Unfortunately, your brain isn't supposed to always be sleeping, right? You see, natural neurotransmitters know how to, your body goes through a process of homeostasis and balance, right? But now you're taking a chemical and putting a chemical inside of your system. It's going to overdo it to the point where if you use too much of it, it can cause cognitive impairment. What does that mean? Your brain is your conscious mind is supposed to take over your subconscious mind, and you're supposed to be alert. The only time you're supposed to be sleeping is basically when you're sleeping. But if you have a drug in your system that has shut down your ability to control your subconscious, then your subconscious is more active. Ataxia or no movement, basically, you shut down your body to move. You're basically asleep. Your muscles cannot move. And the danger of these kind of drugs is when you take these kind of drugs with alcohol is a natural sedative. It's behaving the same way. So it's shutting down your cognition, calming you, and then you take a sleeping pill to calm you. You calm yourself into a coma. There's different states of alertness. There's being alert. There's being drowsy. There's a stupor. I don't know if you remember the episode of Martin. Oh, I guess I can't talk about that. But, a stupor, you can't wake up. Why? Because remember, the purpose of the brain is to shut down your senses. So a stupor, you can push them, you can touch them, you can shove them, you can yell. The sound is not penetrating. If you take a drug plus alcohol, you can cause yourself to go into a coma. A coma is the next level from a stupor, unable to wake up. Your brain you wake up by sensory information. And these kind of drugs, when they're really powerful, they can work against that sleep wakefulness cycle where it stops your brain from receiving sensory information, and it stops your cognitive mind from controlling your situation, your thought processes. Yeah. It also can cross the placenta. It's actually, most drugs can't, but this drug can. It can cross into your baby. And so people who take these drugs, their baby is all floppy, especially in the third trimester. So these are some side effects of these kind of drugs that treat panic disorders and anxiety. And so they're dangerous. So what happens is people start to take lighter versions of the drug, like Z drugs. I'm not mentioning any names of drugs, but one of these type of drugs was in the news this week. Okay, was in the news this week. Roseanne Barr took one of these types of drugs. And so this is not exactly like the benzo drug, meaning it doesn't bind, it doesn't look anything at all. It's structurally different. But it does the same thing. It binds to GABA. Remember I told it binds the GABA receptor. It behaves like GABA. And so it calms you to the point where you are not alert and you're able to go to sleep. So there you have these side effects like sleep eating, sleep sex, sleep driving. That's not that bad. But then you could have visual hallucinations. Why? Because basically your conscious mind is not in control. When you take a drug, you shut down your conscious mind from controlling your unconscious mind. Why do you think alcohol is so dangerous? Why do you think people when they go to a bar, women go to a bar, what is the first thing men ask a beautiful woman? Would you like something to drink? Why? Because you want to slow down. You want to do the same thing that these drugs do. Slow their mind down. They can't make crucial decisions. They don't have full control over their mind. And if you don't have full control over your mind, then anything that you see, you'll start to think there's more of it. Or let me phrase this. I talked about this last time with hallucinations. Your brain is so active. To be straightforward, many scientists are starting to believe that our brain is constantly working and thinking up all kinds of things, seeing all kinds of things. So we all see things that don't exist. We all hear things that don't exist. But remember I told you there's a part of the brain that basically controls and say, hey, that's not real, that's fake. Focus on what is real. That's that very important area of the brain that gets inhibited when you go to sleep. That's why you dream. You dream. And you have all kinds of dreams and nightmares and things like that. It's because your brain is very active and your conscious mind doesn't have the ability to say, hey, that is not real. But when you wake up, you know it's not real. But what happens when you're not awake because you're taking drugs? Drugs that are meant to slow down your brain activity because of anxiety and PTSD, but it gets to the point where it slows it down too much. So they come up with these Z drugs because they're not as dangerous as the benzo drugs or antihistamines. Some people take antihistamines to go to sleep. It's not as bad, right? Those are over the counter. There's all kinds of antihistamines. What histamines do is they're usually there for an allergic response. So people who have allergies, they take it because their blood vessels can open up and they can be protected. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. You get all this nasal, all these mucus release, and because you're trying to fight off something, but it makes you unhappy. So then people take antihistamines to stop the response. At the same time, antihistamines act as neurotransmitters. If you remember that picture of the neurotransmitter where one neuron talks to the other, what that one does, it basically behaves similarly, where it slows down your brain waves and causes you to be more calm. So if you take let me rephrase that. It activates. In this case, this neurotransmitter histamine binds to your brain and makes you alert and active and have the ability to see everything, hear everything, etc. So if you take an antihistamine, that shuts that process down and you go to sleep. So some people take antihistamines to slow their brain down so they can go to sleep. But if they take too much antihistamines, it's also it's going to inhibit another neurotransmitter. I want you to see what drugs do, chemicals do in your brain. You have all kinds of these receptors, just to remind you, just in case people join in. You have all kinds of these receptors that bind to neurons. Remember, there's a neuron. One neuron talks to another neuron. How? By neurotransmitters. And you have all kinds of neurotransmitters. GABA is the one that causes you to calm down. So when I take drugs that behave like GABA, I calm down and go to sleep. Antihistamines behave that way too. It causes the brain to be active. So if I take an antihistamine, it shuts my brain down. But it also messes with it messes with acetylcholine, and that's important for movement. A totally different situation. It's causing you to move. And so when you start taking that drug too much, you're messing around with your movement. You're messing around with everything that acetylcholine is important for. Like acetylcholine is important for you to secrete saliva when you're eating. So if you take that drug that stops acetylcholine, then your mouth gets dry, even though you took it for sleeping. You took it for sleeping, but you took too much of it. And so now it's not working just for sleeping. It's the very important thing that makes your mouth salivate so that you can eat shuts down. You get constipated. Why? Because your digestive system is supposed to be moving your bowels, but it can't. Why? Because you took a drug that stopped you from moving your bowels. Even though it was for, causing you to go to sleep. So what happens is people don't want to get these heavy drugs, benzo, so they take lighter drugs, but then they take them too much and over long periods of time, and so the side effects kill them. So I hope I made it clear what these drugs do. Can these kind of drugs cause you to have racist rants? I'll say this again. We as a people have constantly put ourselves in environments where we have lots of sensory information, and we learn things, we live our life, we speak our life, right? We have nasty attitudes. We watch nasty shows. So imagine all these things are coming into our mind. But usually when you have good conscious control, this part right here, we call it the frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex. There are special neurons in here that control our emotions, that control our subconscious mind. But when we take drugs that inhibit our conscious mind, what happens? Everything that we learned and have done and said has full control. And so what happens is, does it cause racist rants? Absolutely not. It doesn't cause racism, but people who are racist normally have the ability to control themselves. Why? Because their conscious mind shuts that part down. But when they start taking drugs to shut down their conscious mind, anything can happen. You ever heard people say, you can tell the truth from a drunk? Alcohol basically will let people reveal things. Yeah, whatever's in your spirit, whatever's in your mind, can be enhanced by sedatives like alcohol, like benzo, like Z drugs, even antihistamines if taken too much. So my cousin asked me about an antihistamine. She named it by name. As I said before, I'm not going to name any names of drugs because I'm not saying that these things cause them for sure. This is my speculation. When you lose control, you'll basically be dreaming and while you are awake. So I'll end with this. We have to deal with our emotional issues. Because ultimately, a lot of the times, we're using these drugs to quiet our mind. Our mind is firing, active, anxious. And instead of dealing with the thing that's causing, I'm talking to Black people today, especially, because we like to talk about pray. And I believe in prayer, but I really believe that even religion is used as a drug. Religion is used to take away the pain of the emotion that's causing the anxiety. And anything that takes away the pain or tries to slow it down is an addiction. Religion should be used to address the situation. God should be used to say, I'm not using you to try to quiet it down, but we're going to work this out. What is the issue that is causing my mind to be rapidly active to the point where I'm going to either go to a physician to get a high level, which is benzo, and receive many side effects as a result, or not go to a physician and start taking these over-the-counter drugs that do the same thing. And so you notice today I'm talking about this is your brand of drugs, and I'm not even talking about crack, cocaine. I'm talking about prescription or non-prescription medication that we're using, not because some people are using Benadryl. oh, whoops, blah, blah, blah. Some people are using certain types of medications, right? Not necessarily to deal with their emotions, but to deal with, I'm sorry, not to deal with, allergic reactions, but to calm their mind. We got to deal with our emotional issues, guys. When you start to face a panic attack or emotional disorder, I encourage people to go seek out cognitive therapy, where you can use your natural mind to control the subconscious. You find out what the issue is, so that you don't have to use the chemicals out there to do that, which have all kinds of side effects. I am the phenomenal STEMist. I hope I was able to really help you guys understand what sedatives do, what hypnotics do. Do they cause racist rants? They're not the cause, but they eliminate control. So do I believe that a certain comedian took a drug and went on a rampage on Twitter? I believe her. And what was already in her mind was released to the world. Why? Because a drug inhibited the part of the mind that would have told her that is a stupid thing to do. Any questions, guys? No questions? Thanks for joining. I'll wait a couple more seconds. I have a little, there are comments. What's going on? I'm sorry, guys. There's issues with I see that there are comments here. Let me look at my phone. All right. I am sorry. You guys, Alethea, hey, Alethea. I for some reason my yeah, here we go. I'm sorry. Hey, Dana. All right. You did a sleep study, and yes, I'm very clear. Good. Thank you so much. It's so important to me that I'm clear, in terms of explaining science, because I know it could be like, and it's difficult information. But I think it's very important to, get an understanding of what drugs do. So yeah. So no more questions. I think I have. Say, proves my point. True serum lets the subconscious take over, and the lid does come off of your mouth and emotions. That's right. Lids come out off your mouth. That's what these sedatives do. And that's why it's so important not to take these drugs. And when you have to, I know, psychiatrists and psychologists have to prescribe some medications for people who have PTSD, but I think there's a new wave of something that we call cognitive behavioral therapy, where we're trying to come away from these drugs and really deal with the issue that's causing the pain, causing the anxiety, deal with the trauma that's causing this. Or else people they won't be ready for prescriptions, the benzos, so they'll go to the over-counter and they'll take the Z drugs, and then even the antihistamines. And you're taking antihistamines to go to sleep, and you don't know why. Find out why. If you have to take anything to go to sleep, you have to ask yourself, why? And if you can't find the answer, you may need to go talk to someone. I am the phenomenal STEMist. Thanks so much for joining. Have a good night.